Hello and welcome. First of all, I want to apologize for Honey. Her medications have stopped working completely, so what you are hearing is her. I am working on figuring out what to do with her, but she's making a lot of noise right now, so if you can hear that, which you probably can because it's very loud at the moment, that is her. Unfortunately, heart failure medication just doesn't work forever, so that's what you're hearing. My cat is here. I don't know if you can see anything but her tail right there. Hi. So, today I thought I'd talk about what you should get before you get rats so that you are as prepared for them as you can be when you bring them home. Because it's not always so easy to just go pick them up and have everything immediately handed to you. I know some breeders offer like bin cages and stuff to get you started. I don't recommend bin cages. I don't personally like them, but you know, some breeders do offer that. But yeah, and even rehoming situations, a lot of time if they offer their full setup, you don't necessarily know if that's going to be what you need. And I don't personally think you should be looking for rats and a full setup when you first start, because that can lead to situations where you kind of don't do a lot of research and put yourself in a bad position. So, doofus. So I think you should do research, be prepared, and have all the stuff you need beforehand so that you are in the best position possible to learn as you go and take care of your rats as needed. So let's go ahead and get started on what you'll need. So first and foremost, you're going to want some educational material, essentially. And you can't really trust pamphlets or care guides that you find like in stores or online, because a lot of times they have misinformation. So my recommendation is actually to join some Facebook groups. Facebook groups are not actually very good a lot of the time. There's a lot of misinformation on there as well. The ones I recommend the most are Rat Care UK, the Sheenamite Diet USA, and any Facebook groups that those two groups recommend, because the information on there is very good, very helpful. Even if you're in the US, the Rat Care UK group has a lot of very good, up-to-date information, and it can seriously help you with your rats when things start to go wrong, because things will go wrong. Rats are fun like that. The next basic thing would be a cage. You do want a cage before you get your rats, and you want it set up before you bring them home so that they can just go from the carrier into the cage, no fuss, no muss. So if you want a large cage, my recommendation would be the Critter Nation. Of course, I have 5 of them, so obviously it's going to be my recommendation. If you want a medium-sized cage, a single-story Critter Nation is great. There's a lot of cages that are around that size in the US at the moment. I can't attest to most of them. I can just say that the Critter Nation itself is very good. You do not want the Ferret Nation because the bar spacing is too large, especially for baby rats. But the Critter Nation is great for pretty much anything that the Ferret Nation is also good for. If you want a smaller cage, my recommendation would be the Preview Ranch, as this is large enough for up to 3 rats, which would be great for 3 babies, or if you're just starting out, or if you don't have a lot of room. It is large enough for 3 rats. You can even fit a 16-inch wheel in there. So that is a great option for if you just need something to fit on top of a table. Now, if you do end up with like a Critter Nation style cage, the chances are good you're going to need some kind of cage modification. So for example, with this cage, hi Junie, as you can see, I've taken out all the shelves and I have this metal pan here so that their substrate can be a little bit deeper, minimize a little bit of the mess. Hi Junie. Or at least that's what people say. It doesn't really minimize the mess in my experience. But yeah, so it's that kind of thing. So if you want a tray, if you have like a Critter Nation and you want a deeper tray like this, you can either do these kinds of trays. I get mine from Bass Pro Equipment, or there is also Quality Cages, I think is what it's called. I would stick with Bass Pro Equipment because they are cheaper by like a long shot than Quality Cages. I'm getting kisses. Or you can go with the option of a cement mixing tub from Lowe's or Home Depot, because the large size fits quite nicely into a Critter Nation. You do need to take the top and sides off if you want to fit it in there safely, because otherwise you do risk breaking the bars if you just kind of shove it in there. But you can do that, and that is an option. Hi Joja. You guys see them? Look at my little babies. Oh, kisses. Kisses. Thank you so much for the kisses. I'm easily distracted by rats, I'm sorry. Now, you're going to want to fill one of these cages up, obviously, because as you can see, especially if you choose to take the shelving out like I have with my single stories, and then with my doubles I took the middles out, but I left the shelves in. And if you want to do that, you're going to need things. So there's hammocks. You can get cheap hammocks off Amazon, but you can also get really quality hammocks off of either sellers on Facebook or off of Etsy, and you just look up rat hammocks. I would recommend getting like a higher quality hammock. You can also make your own, but I would recommend getting a higher quality hammock just because rats are very destructive, and the higher quality, the longer they last. So the cheap the cheap Amazon hammocks tend to get shredded very quickly. They love making holes in those. A lot of people don't like them because of the material they're made from. It's considered dangerous. I have mixed opinions on that because the only times my rats have actually gotten in trouble is with fleece. I still give them fleece. It's just a matter of pretty much anything you put in a rat's cage has a chance of injuring them or doing something like that. So with hammocks, with the cheap hammocks you get off Amazon, is they do tend to get shredded in the wash as well, because even if you take the little hooks off, they get tangled up really easily in other things, and those little straps just rip right off. It is really frustrating. So I would suggest, at least if you have the money and the chance before you get rats, I would suggest getting some high quality hammocks, because it is so much better than the cheap stuff. But the cheap stuff will do in a pinch. So there's also ropes. So as you, I don't know if you can actually see in this cage. Well, I have some 3-foot ropes in all of my cages. The doors have 3 in the single just because they need a little bit more because they're tiny. And then I have 3 in all of my doubles as well because they're larger. So these 3-foot dog ropes I get from Walmart. You can also get them from pet stores or online. The Walmart ones are fairly cheap. They're only like $9 now. They used to be $8, but I think now they're $9. And yeah, you can just load up on those, and then you can get some C-clips or some, I don't know what they're called. I'll put a picture up of them. Or maybe there's metal C-clips. I don't know. But that's how I hang them, is I make a loop out of those, and then I take a shower hook and I just hang them like that. I can try and get a picture of that and post it up for you guys as well. And ropes are a great way to fill the middle of a cage so that they have a lot of climbing opportunities. You can leave the shelves in. A lot of people do. It's kind of like that's kind of like a care standard thing between countries, whether you leave them in or not. I take mine out and I take the middles out of my doubles, just because it's so much easier to put stuff in the cage when they are not in the way. I can really load up a cage if I don't have to deal with the shelves and the singles or the middles and the doubles. So I do leave my normal shelves in the doubles, the like half ones, because I use those as litter trays. And it's also nice to know that if someone falls, they're not going to fall straight to the bottom. So you should also decide what kind of substrate and litter you're going to want to use, because you can be allergic to it. So I talked to a lot of people who asked me what I use because they got like aspen or hemp or something, and then discovered they're allergic to the aspen or the hemp. And that's not great, obviously. So I would suggest getting small bags of what you want to use and just kind of testing it out, like opening it up, fluffing it up a little bit to see how you react before you get the rats, when you have the ability to like do an emergency run and go get something else. Because you don't want it in the cage. You don't want to put it in the cage and then be stuck with it for a while, because you don't have other options. The same goes for the litter. Not many people are allergic to like paper pellets or stuff like that, but you can be allergic to it, or it can be too dusty for you, and you're just going to want to make sure you have exactly what you want. Another thing you should look into getting is foraging toys. So rats need a lot of enrichment. They get bored very easily, and some of the best enrichment is foraging toys or scatter feeding. Scatter feeding is really when you just take their food and you scatter it about. In vein, you can do a foraging toy where, for example, this, I don't know if you can see it, but I have this foraging wheel in here, and I put food in there, and they have to rotate the outside and reach through to grab the food. And the small bits, it's really good because they really have to work for it, and that keeps them enriched. It keeps them entertained. And that's what you want to do with your rats, is you want to keep their minds engaged in what they are doing. So foraging toys are a great way to do that. So is nesting material. So nesting material can be crinkle paper bedding. It can be shredded cardboard or toilet paper tubes, or packing material. It does not have to cost a lot. You can just save up the stuff you get from packaging and put it in their cage. Babies, in my experience, take a little while to get used to nesting. They're not huge into it, but my adults do typically. It really depends. So like for the dwarfs, like my two dwarfs here, they are not that big on nesting. They're a year old and they just don't really do it very often. But all of my standard size rats do, except for the Gravies, who are only going to be 6 months old a little later this month. So it is rat dependent, but typically adult rats really enjoy nesting, both males and females. Now this might seem a little odd, but I also suggest you get a smaller cage. So if you have like a double story, a single story, or like a ranch style cage, I suggest you get like a hamster cage or something in that vein, because sometimes things go wrong very quickly and you need a hospital cage. And if you need a hospital cage very shortly after getting your rats, you don't want to be scrambling trying to find one either online or in the store and just worried about your rat who could be injured. So if you start out with just getting one beforehand, it can really save you a lot of headaches later. And you're also going to want to know exactly what you're planning on feeding them beforehand. So the thing with that is a lot of people in the US prefer to feed a pelleted diet with either Science Selective or Oxbow. I choose not to. I choose to do the Shunamite diet. There's still a lot of mixed opinions on that in the US specifically, because vets will tell you to feed a pelleted diet because it is everything they need in a pellet form. It's very boring food. So Oxbow and Science Selective are generally considered decent foods in the US. Other countries absolutely hate them. I get it. I don't use them for a reason. The thing with a pelleted diet is you cannot curate it to your rats. So if you need or if you have a rat that needs less protein, like an older rat or an older male rat especially, or a Harley. Harleys do better with less protein. I think they do well with insect protein, if I'm remembering correctly. I haven't had a Harley, so I haven't done the research. But they need less protein, and you have a set amount of protein in Oxbow and Science Selective. So if you do a mix, you can curate that to your rats. So you need to decide if you want to go with a mix or if you want to go with a pelleted food. And if you go with a mix, you're really going to need to do that way ahead of time to make sure that you have everything correct before you get your rats. And then again, if you go with a mix, you're also going to need calcium and vitamins to supplement them with, which a lot of people don't want to do, and I understand it can be intimidating. But I've been feeding Shunamite for 2.5, 3 years now, and my rats are super happy on it. I have not had any issues. I've had less rusting on the Shunamite diet than I've had with pelleted food. Rusting is when they're not getting enough copper in their diet and their butt starts to turn brown. It can be caused by a couple of other things, but I've had less of it since feeding Shunamite diet. Just saying. You're also going to want a carrier. So if you get a small cage, that can double as a carrier, but you're going to need a carrier to go pick them up, because chances are they're not going to be coming in a cage you can just put in the back of your car and take with you. So I have this style of carrier, and I have this style of carrier. They're pretty easy to find. You can get them from PetSmart, Amazon. They work really well. And again, if you get the small cage, you can use that as a carrier as well. This also helps to have a carrier for when you're cleaning the cage. You can just pop them in there. They'll go right to sleep. You clean the cage, you open it up, you put them back in. It works really well. Next thing I'm going to talk about might seem a little weird, but it's a vet. You're going to want an exotic vet before you get your rats. And the reason you want an exotic vet beforehand is, again, sometimes things go wrong very quickly, especially if you've gotten your rats from a less reputable source. And a lot of time you don't know that until they become sick. I have had baby rats die on me. I have had friends who had baby rats die on them, and they got them from a reputable source. So the thing is, rats are very, very fragile. Baby rats are very, very fragile. So they're also very hardy. They fight. Rats fight very, very hard. But you're going to need a vet. So my suggestion would be to call around to your local exotic vets, figure out who you like the best, who has the most experience. There's like a list of questions you can ask them. I have a video on that. And yeah, you call around, you make a list, you see what prices they have that they'll give you, make an Excel sheet, do whatever you need. I have an Excel sheet with dozens of vets on it. Because when I moved to Texas, it turns out the vet care is not what I was used to back in Arizona. So I had to really plan hard for my rat's future. So I suggest you do that before you even get them, because it'll bring you a lot of peace of mind, which also means you should have a vet fund. So when you decide you want to start getting rats, I would suggest at the very least putting away $65 to $70 a paycheck, because that is roughly the price of an exam. And then when you get rats and you know and understand how much vet care costs, I would adjust that price to what you can do and what you feel comfortable doing, to ensure that you have what you need for your rats. And the last thing I'm going to talk about might seem a little weird, but I promise you it will save you a lot of heartache if you're one of the many people who's allergic to rats, which is if you have the ability to, go handle some rats. Most rescues and breeders are not going to let strangers come over and handle their rats, admittedly. And if you're not strong enough to walk away from pet store rats, then I wouldn't suggest handling them either. But if you have a friend, or if you do have like a rescue or breeder near you who's willing to let you come handle their rats, I would highly, highly suggest you do that, because I cannot tell you how often I see in rehoming groups people who get new rats, fresh little baby rats, and discover within a week or two that they are extremely allergic to them. It's usually their urine. A lot of people are allergic to the rat's urine. It can also be the bedding, so don't jump to conclusions. There's also different kinds of rats cause different kinds of allergies, meaning like some people are extremely allergic to intact males but have no issues with females. Or they're allergic to standard size rats but they're okay with dwarf rats. Or they're fine with neutered males but not intact males. There's a lot of factors to allergies with rats. But if you can go handle the kind of rat you want to get, as in male, female, neutered, dwarf, whatever, what have you, if you can go handle them and see if you break out in hives or if your throat starts to close up before you put all your time and effort into getting all this stuff and getting rats and being attached to them, you will save yourself a lot of heartache. I was fortunate enough that I handled rats a lot before I got mine, because my teacher had rats and I played with them every day. Not everyone is that fortunate. So if you have the ability to, I just recommend it. All right. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, you know what to do. All the fun stuff down below. And I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye!